the street and had a woman run out to me and say, "Man of God, come and pray, for my daughter." Now I'm telling you, that stuff only happens because they can see the power of God on you. So yes, God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and miracles still occur just like they do in the Bible today. You just have to put yourself in a position to see them. So, just to show you what God can do after that missions trip, I started leading trips. I've taken as many as 50 people, and I believe Alex was on one of the trips, but I've taken 50 people to Mexico. I've taken people to Africa. I've taken people to Belize, to Romania, to Cuba several times. I've done prison ministries. All of this for an ex-drug addict, an ex-thug, somebody who spent 17 years so angry at God that I wouldn't have anything to do with them. And yet God took that same person and I used to always say there's two things I would never do. I'd never go to Africa. I would never work with teens. I've been to Africa twice. I've still never worked with teens. Yeah. But, and even that, you're talking about something that's so how wonderful God is. In 2001, I'm in Livingstone, Africa, which is in Zambia. I'm 6 miles from the nearest road, building an orphanage. And at 1 o'clock in the morning, they wake me up and they tell me my wife had a stroke. Took me 44 hours to get home. And, that's a, man, if I got a sermon that I could preach about that. But the point I'm making is once I got home within 3 days, literally, I have got postcards and letters from all over the world telling me that they're praying for me and my wife. I mean, you just would not believe it. So, you think you're being of a service to God and all that, but let me tell you, God is faithful and God watches out. And I can't express to you at that point in my life the fear that I had for her, and to start getting cards from, Belize and Cuba and Romania and Africa, and literally, just all over the world, and all of them, and me having this realization, literally, people from all over this planet are lifting me up in prayer and lifting my wife up in prayer. Man, it gets you through. It does. There's something about it that gets you through. I'm not going to take up much more of your time. I know Rocky's got some things to share, but I do want to tell you this one thing. God has made it very simple to witness to people. That Satan will lie to you and tell you all sorts of lies. Well, I don't want to be rejected. What if they don't like me? What if they ask me something that I can't answer? What if they quote the Bible to me and I don't know? There's a million things that he can come up with. First, I want to tell you, I've done prison ministries. I promise you, the bishop would be lucky if he could hold a candle to these people who have spent 24 hours a day, 7 days a week locked in the cell with nothing but a Bible. They can quote scriptures inside and out, upside down. They know them. So it's not God didn't call us to witness to people or to defeat the enemy by the blood of the Lamb and their knowledge of the Bible. It's by the word of your testimony. And truly, it took just a few minutes in any prison ministry to break through that shell that they want to play, because the first thing all of them want to do is let you know how much they know. But it doesn't take long to get past that once you start sharing what God's done for you. You know, because ultimately you are on this side, and they're not. But, you know, I give everybody hope because I've seen things that God can do. It's amazing. Just to share with you, if I can get through this, God gave me a vision one time. I call it a vision. People who've studied me know more about me. I can tell you this: I wasn't asleep. I wasn't dreaming. I was sitting at a table. I went into a trance-like state of mind to where there was nothing around or going on but me and God. And God gave me this vision. And in this vision, I had died and I was going to heaven. But before I got to heaven, Jesus took my hand and we were walking down this hallway. And as we were walking down this hallway, I heard this murmuring. And we were coming up on a window. And over the window, it was labeled family. And I looked in there, and there was 2 or 3 people in this room. They had no face. I couldn't determine who they were. But there was 2 or 3 people in this room, and this is the place where those that didn't make it, they were in transit to hell. But, you know, at first I was tremendously sad, and then I stopped and I thought, wow, I got a lot of family. That's not bad. Really, that's not bad. There's 2 or 3 in there. It's just not bad. So, you know, I kind of got over it, and we started down the hall again, and I was walking up, and I heard this murmuring and noise, and we come to this second window, and over it said, friends. And I looked in there, and there again, there were a few people in there, but I couldn't put a face to any of them. You know, it was almost like they were faceless. And, you know, and so I took a few minutes and I looked and I thought, well, man, I got a lot of friends. I know a lot of people, you know, and I thought, that's really not that bad. For as many people as I know, you're not going to reach everybody. There's some people that you're just not going to reach. And so I was okay with it. And we started back down the hall. And then as we started going down the hall, we were coming up on this other window. And man, it wasn't just a little murmuring. It was a lot of noise. It was a lot of noise coming out of this room. So when I got up to that window, over top of that window, it said, missed opportunities. And the room was full of people. And I recognized them. There was a friend of mine who had just died in a car crash 2 or 3 months before that I hadn't seen since high school, but he had just come back into my life. I'm a Christian now. He's not. When we ran around together, we was the tough, bad guys. We were the ones that nobody messed with and all that. And so, you know, I didn't know how to witness to him. I was afraid, man, he's going to think, you know, you're weak or you're this or you're that. And so I would do little things. I would kind of throw out hints, but I never would come right out and witness to him. And I remember going home after every time he'd come by the car lot up there, and I'm thinking, man, I have got to witness to this guy. I was sitting home that night watching TV, and they showed a car crash, and he had wrecked and got killed. 4 people in that crash that night. And I'm sitting there going, you got to be kidding me. But I recognized him in that room of missed opportunity. His face was there. There was a drunk, an alcoholic right on Williamson Road that I had pulled through the Wendy's there, and I remember buying him a hamburger, and I pulled out of Wendy's and I said, Lord, please bring somebody into his life to witness to him. And literally God said, I just did. But I had to get back to work. I had things to do. I recognized that drunk in that window. It was just full of people, and I recognized them all. But then at first it was just a garbled noise. But now they've come up to the window and they're pounding on the window, and I can make out what the noise is. And the noise is them asking, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me? There's people destined for hell that I had come in contact with, and they're saying, why didn't you tell me? And let me ask you a question. What kind of lame, weak excuse is fear of rejection? Fear of what people think? Fear of what somebody might say about you? What is that in light of a man asking, why didn't you tell me? I'm telling you, we need to get busy. Pastor mentioned something about hell. We don't hear sermons on brimstone and hellfire and all that anymore. And I don't think that's important for winning the lost. I've always been one of those people that believe God's love, grace, and mercy is what draws them to Him, and that's what's going to eventually get you saved. But you know why it's so important that we hear about hellfire and brimstone? For the believer. So that you know how serious it is for those who are going to hell. And that someday, to finish that story, God did walk me all the way into heaven, and He wiped the tears from my eyes because I was bawling like a baby. But I'm just telling you, at some point, there is going to be a reckoning of missed opportunities for the lamest reasons. For reasons that don't amount to nothing in light of eternity. So I appreciate the opportunity to share this morning. I thank you for listening to me. I probably had more stuff to say. Unlike the pastor, I only got to one page of notes. But anyway, I appreciate it, Rocky.
All right, well, good morning. I'm on the clock. At least that's what I was told. There's a lot of things about outreach that we don't understand, and then we sit and listen to things that people share like Hank. And just for a second until we can get started, I just want you to recall in your mind, why are you sitting where you're sitting right now?
That's a good question. Oh my God, that is a great question.
Some of us, we were invited to church by a friend. Some of us maybe by a family member. Who in here, and I want you to raise your hand, who is invited to go to church by a total stranger? You with me? See, too many times people automatically close up when churches begin to speak about outreach. And that's what I don't want to happen here this morning. I don't want you to put a wall up. I don't want you to say, well, Hank, I can't go to Mexico and talk to somebody I don't know. And Rocky, I don't want to go down on the streets downtown Roanoke and witness to people that I do not know. That's not what I'm about right now. And that's not what I'm trying to implement this morning. But what we're trying to do is build an outreach to where each and every person in here can take part in outreach. outreach isn't, what are you looking for, buddy?